Ms. Payton Clark and Ms. Jacqulyn Harper West. Both are from the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith. Payton Clark is an undergraduate English major, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And we have a staff member also from the same university. Unfortunately, Mr. Siegler and Mr. Williams were not able to make it, and so we won't be able to include them on the panel discussion. So we just have these two fabulous people, and which means they have a little bit more time to analyze and discuss their particular work. I'm Joel Johnson from Fine Arts. I'm assistant professor of music industry and modern guitar, and I am once again happy that you all are here, and I'm now going to turn it over to our presenters.
It's safe to say that many artists are only in the game to make money while generating likes or views. However, there are still artists who focus on the music and how it affects their audience. When the masses think of rappers that changed the game, many think of Tupac, Notorious B.I.G., or Nas. Iconic or legendary aren't exactly words most people relate to modern rappers. Though there are many great rappers of our generation, I believe Logic has the potential to be the next hip-hop icon. Sir Robert Bryson II is a 24-year-old from Gaithersburg, Maryland. At 15, he started rapping and went by the name Psychological, eventually shortening it to Logic. After 5 years without a publicist and $500,000 of his own money, Logic signed with Def Jam in 2011. Nas tried to sign him and even quoted Logic's own lyrics to him when they first met, but Logic believed he would never make it out of Nas's shadow coming from the same label. His first unofficial mixtape, Psychological the Mixtape, released in 2009. In 2010, Logic's first official mixtape was released titled Young, Broke, and Infamous. The following year, Logic released his second mixtape, Young Sinatra. In 2012, he released his third, Young Sinatra Undeniable. The next year, Logic released his fourth official mixtape titled Young Sinatra Welcome to Forever. That same year, Logic was featured on the cover of XXL as part of its annual Top 10 Freshman list. Then on October 21st of 2014, Logic's first studio album, Under Pressure, dropped. Only 2 months after being released, iTunes named Under Pressure as the #1 hip-hop album of the year. Fans and critics alike see the uniqueness that Logic brings to the table. While many mainstream rappers today are focusing on drugs, women, and money, Logic's focus is on making a difference with his music. Under Pressure is more of an autobiography than anything else. He's telling his story in hopes that it will help someone else going through what he has already experienced. That is what sets him apart as to be the next hip-hop icon. The pillars of the creation of hip-hop were focused on the same issues as he is today. It's not commercializing gang violence or the drug scene. It's the reality they've been faced with. The first track of Under Pressure is titled Intro. Logic sets the stage for the rest of the album in this opening by stating, "But if I'm not defined by the sales of my first week, because in my mind the only way I fail if my verse weak, as I look in the crowd and see thousands of different faces compiled of different races gathering from different places." The power of hip-hop is that it's a medium which is relevant in all cultures. It doesn't matter where you're from because hip-hop relates to everyone, not just one race or one mass. Tupac similarly encouraged society to improve. Another theme of Under Pressure is the issue of poverty. Logic is no stranger to struggling to make it. With both parents being addicted to drugs, he lacked stability in his childhood. He references this in his song titled Under Pressure while rapping in the voice that would be his father, saying, "And on the real, I'm trying so hard not to bug you, but do you think you could stop rapping about my drug use? I'm 2 years clean, no longer a fiend." In the song Soul Food, Logic raps, "Trying to stay out of trouble, my homie in jail for robbery, welfare, food stamps, and stealing from the store. Come home and see an eviction notice taped to my door. Can't take no more, mama on drugs, daddy MIA. What can I say? I just wanted to be a kid and play." He continues with, "I finally made my way up out that Section 8 division, not by bustin' and killin', though I've had my share of stealin', but by putting pen to this pad and dispersin' these feelin's." Section 8 is a government housing assistance program for low-income families. He references this again in the song Growing Pain 3, "That welfare check won't ever bounce like my daddy did, but I'm glad he did because it made me strong, made me help somebody with this song. Section 8, grab a plate, food for thought, gravitate. Food stamps, social services trying to take me away." This closely relates to Biggie's song Everyday Struggle when he says, "And I'm living every day like a hustle, another drug to juggle, another day, another struggle." In an interview, Tupac said one of his most famous quotes, I'm 23 years old. I might just be my mother's child, but in all reality, I'm everybody's child. Nobody raised me. I was raised in this society. With decades in between Logic and the Biggie Tupac era, they are still rapping about the same daily struggles, and it's safe to say the culture as a whole has changed since the early 90s. However, the battle of trying to make it out of this self-named American dream transcends through time. The struggle will always exist, and that will be the base of creativity and activism to grow. Logic also raps heavily about the gang scene. His song titled Gang Related takes the listener into his hometown and the gang activity he experienced there. He begins with, where they are up to no good on a night like this, and they murder me just 'cause, type see and wonder probably where I was. I was in the crib just sitting on the rug, based heads coming through looking for the plug. Not only did he see this gang activity at such an early age, the drug scene was also highly active in his household. He continues with, living life to the fullest, I got a blow, po-po, fixing to bust down the door. We got a blow in the crib, in the kitchen over there with the baby, next to the baby with the bib. Damn, what it feel like middle of the night, waking up, scared for my life. Never had the heat, just a knife, when the gat go blat like that. It's a fair observation to note that the gang scene is not the same as it was in the early 90s. While the 90s dealt with East Coast, West Coast rivalries, gangs of today are less focused on the Coast War. Today, the focus lies in what specific gang you belong to, race, and more importantly, territory. For the past several years, the number one killer of Crips are other Crips. This is due to the expansion of sets on their blocks. A gang is nothing without their base. However, Nas released a statement after Biggie's death saying my attitude was messed up about him dying. There was an East-West thing back then, and I was in war mode. He later said that after the deaths of both Tupac and Biggie, he believed hip-hop to be dead. In contrast, there is one major difference in the known icons and Logic. Logic's mother is Caucasian and his father is African American. Having several brothers and sisters that all appear to be African American, Logic is the only child that appears to be Caucasian. Through the song Roll Call, which is on a previous mixtape, Logic raps, I'm back again with another argument about how much I'm black again, fighting for credibility from the lack of blacker skin. It's kind of funny how your pigment determines how people perceive you. Logic has to validate his place in the hip-hop community due to the lightness of his skin. This differs from how Tupac, Biggie, and Nas felt when they had to prove themselves worthy due to their skin color being darker. Hip-hop has been around for many years, and there's no sign of it slowing down. Whether that's a good hip-hop or a bad hip-hop, that's for you to decide. The handful of icons are icons for a reason. They were iconic. They changed the game. Logic is a young and upcoming rapper that is going to change the game. The similarities of the legends ring throughout Logic's work and will continue to be in the shadow of all he creates. Nas said it best. Hip-hop is the streets. Hip-hop is a couple of elements that comes from back in the days, that feel of music with urgency that speaks to you. It speaks to your livelihood and is not compromised. It's blunt, it's raw, straight off the street, from the beat to the voice to the words. While other genres wither away into irrelevance, hip-hop is here to stay and will continue to evolve with the times into something new and fresh while still being faithful to the grounds and the work of founders. Thank you. I'm good.
I want to be able to hear you too, so I'm very much in favor of the call and response kind of audience participation method of interaction there. So if you have something to say, shout it out, please. Let me know where you are. Say it again. Yes. All right. I'm Jacqulyn Harper West. I'm from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Thanks for being here with me today. Thank you, Professor Andre, and everyone who put this together. We wouldn't be here without you, and I'm glad to see you all. Please take a moment, look around. These are the people who care. These are the people who want this to be something and to be real. I'm glad we're doing this together. Give yourselves a round of applause. If you have your program handy, you can see the title of my presentation is Once Upon a Time in the Wild, Wild West. Mr. Bobby Lopez raps about legendary lawman Bass Reeves, right? Something close to that anyway, right? All right, let me start with the title, and then we'll go back from there. Once Upon a Time in the West was a movie. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. If you're into the whole Italian Western thing, then it's gonna be for you, and if you're not, then have a drink and enjoy yourself. It'll be something weird that you can tell your friends about or never speak of again. So, going off the aspect of naming something that you are creating after something that might not be relevant at all to the thing you're doing, pastiche, in hip hop, I took that title to describe this work that I'm doing here. So Fort Smith describes itself as the place where the New South meets the Old West. So keeping that in mind, and one more nod to Will Smith again, the Wild Wild West makes its home in Fort Smith, Arkansas. True West magazine chose Fort Smith as its top Western city for 2010. We're all so proud. No, but really, there are some people who are actually proud of that fact. So Fort Smith trades in literal and metaphorical ways on this Western identity, this construct of cowboys and Indians and outlaws and lawmen. And one among those is Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves was a 19th century lawman. He'd been born a slave. He came up to Sebastian and Crawford counties in Arkansas and worked for the Western District of Arkansas, the federal court there. Now, Fort Smith still, from its inception, is located on the confluence of the Arkansas and the Poteau rivers. It's in the northwest corner of Arkansas, all the way on the edge, so we can see the river, and on the other side is Oklahoma. In 1907, Oklahoma became Oklahoma, having been Indian territory. So there's only a little more than 100 years of this having been a state. And Arkansas, especially people on that portion of Arkansas, still relate to Oklahoma as though it is a little wild and a little rough and a whole lot of capital O other. So a lot of the identity that Fort Smith comprises is based on that idea of this is us and that's them and everybody else can go to hell. And Fort Smith is known as hell on the border for good reason. If you are up on any Native American history, you know about the Cherokee Dawes rolls. Anna Dawes was the daughter of the congressman who constructed those rolls. She came to Fort Smith and saw the conditions that prisoners were living in the federal prison there, and wrote back to her father, "It's like a hell on earth." And it was so accurate and so catchy that it stuck. And these are the things that our city likes to bank on and to sell itself on. It got to me a few years ago. I was looking around thinking, I wasn't born here, but I sure am from here by now. And what is this town doing for me? What am I doing for it? What difference does any of that make? And I realized that our Tourist and Convention Bureau is housed in a former brothel. That's a house. I find that problematic, especially as a woman. And so I began doing some research, and I said, why, Fort Smith? Why are you telling people who need to come here and spend their cash dollars, or even their credit dollars, on a good time in this town, that they need to come and do it at the former house? And that's the good place to start. Just as a woman, let alone as a feminist, I thought, this is all kinds of backwards. Somebody's got it in their head it's a good idea, so I'm going to try to figure out why. The best thing that I could figure is that there's a small handful of people who have found a way to dress up and play pretend and make money and have fun with their friends, and they're doing that under this Western guise. And that's extended out from the Convention and Tourism Bureau. The mayor has dressed up as Rooster Cogburn. If you remember, a few years back, the Coen brothers remade a movie called True Grit that won John Wayne his only Oscar in 1969. There are reasons these things stick around in the historical memory, right? And they're not good reasons, but these are the things that my town is banking on. All of this came together a few years ago in the downtown area. It's all within about a square mile of each other. The Tourism and Convention Bureau, the National Historic Site, which holds and houses that former prison, the Fort Smith Museum of History, which used to be called the Old Fort Museum. All these places are within walking distance of each other. And the town decided it would be a great idea to erect a statue to someone. Now, they had tried to get Zachary Taylor former U.S. president, but the spacious connection to Fort Smith was proven to be just that. There was no good evidence for why it should be Zachary Taylor. Lo and behold, despite all the other lawmen, here comes Bass Reeves, and we're going to celebrate this man. And to all those people in the power structure, this was a really great idea, because this is one of the ways that we can show we appreciate diversity in this town because he's a black man. And it sounds really hateful to go ahead and break it all the way down like that, but that's just about how clear-cut it was. One man who works for a local magazine, it's called Entertainment Fort Smith, spoke to a representative from the newspaper, the Times Record in Fort Smith, at the dedication of the Bass Reeves statue, and he earnestly, hand to God, said, "It doesn't matter if Bass Reeves was black or white. He deserves this statue because he was that good." And so what this tells me is that people in my hometown have an understanding of the world that upholds the supremacy of whiteness, that privileges skin color, that indicates simply by the way you look and where you come from, you get these opportunities, and you don't. I thought I had been born into the late 20th century and that those struggles were over. Little did I know, when I would come to be an adult, I would still find these things happening, playing out, even on the public scale in my own hometown, and I found that to be a problem. So when I started looking up, just for my own edification, what is the difference between rap and hip hop? This is something that a 30-year-old woman ought to know. I found this opportunity, hip hop conference, Albany, Georgia. And I said, thank you, Jesus. I needed to know. Amen? So here's the intersection of all of these moments of questions and answers and identity and problem and resource. The Bass Reeves statue is brought across Oklahoma because Bass spent the last of his life in Muskogee, walking a beat, being a lawman over there. So they took the statue from Muskogee and they drove it, covered up, all the way to Fort Smith. It's only a couple-hour drive, but when you've got a 13-foot statue covered in some tarps, it's going to take a while. And it was a big news event, because that's how much news happens in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So they bring the statue to town with a whole entourage behind it. Unveil it, invite the mayor, all the fanciest white people who run the town, and even the people who don't run anything except their own families to come and see. This is a great day for Fort Smith, and everybody else who can manage to come down too. So after scads of people, including state representatives, the mayor, preachers, who incidentally happened to sit on the city board of directors, no conflict of interest or anything, all come up and talk about this with no introduction except to say, Mr. Bobby Lopez will perform a rap about legendary lawman Bass Reeves. There begins the one instance of hip-hop culture that I have ever seen in public in Fort Smith. That was true. Somebody said, psh. I too was surprised. I had known Mr. Bobby Lopez as Chris Cheney at Northside High School, Fort Smith, Arkansas. A little more information to give you an idea of the cultural landscape of this place. Northside, go Bears, had been Fort Smith High School up until the 60s, when the people who had been living on the south side of town, thanks to the realtors who would say, no, you don't go live on the north side because that's where the people who commit crimes live. That's where people who don't have good things go. You come over here and live on the south side. Those people got together and decided they needed their own high school, and they called it South Side, and their mascot is the Rebel. To this day, no sense of irony, not even after they stole the Ole Miss Rebel and flipped him around and decided that was what they were going to use. Yes. Correct. So these are the people who flood the downtown and look and say, it doesn't matter if he was black or white, he was that good. Have a seat, sir. Your intentions are hopefully heartfelt and honest, not quite correct. Nonetheless, this is what happened. So Mr. Bobby Lopez, Chris Chaney, a graduate like myself of Fort Smith Northside High School, by the grace of God, performs this rap about Bass Reeves. Most of the material came from a book by Art Burton, who teaches in Chicago. You can Google him. Even Art Burton, bless his heart, has Art Burton's Wild West on his website with a picture of the Mojave Desert, which is not necessarily the West, nor is it wild, but this is more of that true grit, that Americana imagery, that how do we construct an image, an idea, a mythos of what we want America to be. And the thing that it looks like in Fort Smith is very black and white, with all the implications of race and color that that entails, where the New South meets the Old West. Again, no sense of irony. The New South? What does that mean? It's bad for business to talk about race? Yes. The mayor said something similar just a few weeks ago. We're not going to say that gay marriage can't be an issue. We're not going to say that because economically it's going to be bad for our city. This is the New South. This is what the New South looks like. It still looks like Jim Crow because it's not different and it's not better. Meets the Old West, which was as highly integrated a society as America had seen up until that point, because people had to live together if they were going to live. But that's the part that falls off, because the people who pretend in Fort Smith in that way don't associate with people who don't look like them. They're all white people playing pretend with their guns. Terribly frightening. Nonetheless, these are the folks who show up. No introduction for Bobby Lopez or his lyrics based on Art Burton's book. Also, Vonda Nelson wrote this book for children. Black Gun, Silver Star is one of Art Burton's books. There's another book about Bass Reeves by Vonda Nelson, which is actually pretty right on. I'll recommend that one to you. If you have children, check out that book. So I got to thinking, just how did Chris Chaney become Mr. Bobby Lopez? How did Mr. Bobby Lopez come to do a rap at this scene in Fort Smith? Who thought it was a good idea to let this one incident be the reason that hip-hop culture gets represented in Fort Smith? I've certainly never seen this happen before outside the walls of Northside High School. So I find out more from State Representative George McGill, the one man of color I know in Fort Smith who does active political engagement, which is not to say there are not more politically involved people. There are 3 others. But Mr. McGill says, yes, Chris Chaney came up to this event and became this spokesperson for this thing because he took the initiative to do that. Because he came to us and said, I want to know how I can get involved. Show me what I can do to bring my portion of myself and my culture to the greater landscape and the wider lands in Fort Smith. So I started to get a little proud again, like people are standing up and representing, maybe even coming correct. How about that? That's impressive. That feels good. So then I dug a little deeper and I said, okay, what does this mean? I am Fort Smith. I see this around and I hear people talk. And as has been noted, haters gonna hate. True that, yes? So what does this mean? I am Fort Smith. So I sat down with Chris Chaney and I said, tell me, what does this mean to you since this is your brand and this is the thing that you push and you make happen? And he says, well, all right. See now, what it is, it's like, and he laughs. And I realize that he's about to tell me something that he doesn't usually reveal to people. And I start to think, thank God for at least the tenuous connection of being an alumni of the same school and having a couple of mutual friends, so we can say, hey, let's talk about this, because how else do you get to know except by who you know? So he laughs and he says, all right, you know when Moses went to talk to Pharaoh? And I said, now, Chris, you got to remember, it's been a long time since I've been down to the church myself, so take me there, help me remember. All right. So in the book of Exodus, Moses is instructed by God to go up to Pharaoh and to tell him, my God said, I am, and I represent for my people. And so when I say I am Fort Smith, on the one hand, it means that. It means like, I am the power. I am the reason. And on the other hand, it means like, if you want something to change, you gotta be that change first. And then you can take it out to your city. And so when you put those together, then you are the power to make your life different. You are the power to make your city better. And that's what I'm trying to do. So that's what I do, said Chris Chaney. And I said, all right, I'm already going to Georgia to talk about the work you did. Let me get in on this, and I'll go represent too. I am Fort Smith in that way, and I'm gonna take it to those people. And so we got excited. All right, we're taking this all the way to Georgia. Yes. So when we get to Georgia, somebody says, hey, what is there to do in Arkansas? Come to Georgia. So once again, thanks y'all for being here. So more on this story if I've got a little more time. We're good? Amen? I started this research and I thought, these are problems, and I want to figure out how it got to be this way. And what I figured out is it got to be this way because the people who get to make the decisions, the people who have the money and the power and are moving things around in those directions, are the ones who want it to stay the same. And as long as those are the ones who are making the decisions in the ballot box and with the property and with who gets elected into even city positions, maybe even especially city positions, then those are going to be the people who get to make the decisions for everybody. Fort Smith is a city of about 80,000 people, and there's still a lot of segregation based on race, based on poverty, and based on wrong-headed ideas. I was lucky enough to grow up in different parts of Fort Smith and see how different people live, not just different races of people, but different attitudes, different mindsets. And it opened up the world to me in a way that I didn't ever know was going to be possible, and allowed me to connect with people and understand humanity is the basis of all the relationships I ever want to have, regardless of what music I'm listening to, or what church I go to, or who speaks to me, or wants me to give them an answer. That's the thing that starts it all, and that's the love. And that's what I found when I started researching hip hop. When you get back down to the elements and you look in your own heart, the thing you find in every single one of those places is the love. And that is real, and that is righteous, and that is true. And I found that with Chris Chaney. And I found that with a few people who talked to me from Fort Smith about where they come from and why they came to be that way. Those who want to reach out across the lines of difference and to find the common thread and to make our city better and to make our lives better for one and each and all, we can agree on that. So I'm glad I found it here with y'all as well. Thank you.
Thank you again. I really appreciate that. At this time, we'd like to entertain any questions. Anyone? Okay.
Somebody said yes.
Yes.
Hi, it's me, it's Holly. Okay. My question is I have two questions. My first question is, how many people are there in Fort Smith? How many black people are there in Fort Smith?
We've got, I think, about 8%. Somebody math. What's about 8% of 80,000? How many?
No, 8%.
Okay,
So that's about the number?
that's about right.
Okay. Okay, my second question is, you said that you wanted to be the change, or that you wanted to be a part of the change.
Right.
Like, what do you really want to do? Like, what's the main goal
Right.
in this change?
Okay, so my first problem with the way that Fort Smith represents itself was come visit the house and see what other attractions we have, right? So I started looking at that and what are the representations of women? So this all started from my own feminist perspective and understanding and questions. So I get there and I realize every one of these people are white. It ain't everybody in this town white, so what are they doing? So then I go and I look at the Fort Smith Museum of History. I had to take a moment, excuse me. It took 15 years from the first time I went in there until the time that I saw more than 3 pictures of a person of color in that museum. And then, when I did, 2-story, it's a 4-story building, but they've got exhibits on 2 stories. Upstairs, all the way in the back, in the corner, is the Black people exhibit. Can we just share this moment of outrage? It's as though separate is inherently unequal has not occurred to anyone there. But that's the way it looks. And the impression that I get from the people who put things together like this is that that's inclusive and that that's important. Because look how much is here and look how much we've tried. When that exhibit starts with a culled collection from a doll collection that has some tribal African rope-haired wood creatures and some mammy dolls, just across from a picture of Chris Cheney, just around the corner from a Barack Obama presidential poster, with no interpretation, I find this still problematic. So, the change I want to see is better representation, better identification, and thorough interpretation. Because just exhibiting something from the past, just showing a bunch of old things, is insufficient to any cause. And so, to be where we are, whoever we are, and wherever we are, there needs to be dialogue, not just statements coming from one source, not just representations collected by one group. There needs to be give and take. And there needs to be more than just black and white. So this was another thing that I noticed. It's all very black and white and red. Indian Territory, like I said, just right across the river. Even the depictions of Native Americans are very Victorian or very tribal. You know, the women are displayed as these talismans of culture, and they're transmitting their way of life that's dying to their children, who they hold close to their breast. And black women, when they are depicted, are stoic and wearing beautiful hats or mourning the loss of their husbands and sons. All of this is terribly insufficient and such a diminution that I think it's profane. So I want to facilitate more dialogue and to see better public representations of those conversations.
I'm going to add something real quick to that. And forgive me if I stop. This topic makes my blood boil, and I can already feel my heart pounding just thinking about it. How Fort Smith, we claim, welcome to Fort Smith, the hanging city.
True story.
On everything, on T-shirts, in the mall, to everywhere, because we had a judge who was known for how many criminals he hung, which all happened to be minorities.
They weren't all. It broke down to about a third, white, black, red. Given that the white population was significantly larger than both the black and Native American portions of people in Indian Territory and Arkansas, which comprised the Western District of Arkansas at that time, that's still a problem.
And it's on, I mean, it's broadcasted everywhere. It's not thought of as, you know, this is our past that we should be ashamed of. It's, we are proud of our heritage for some ungodly reason.
Western heritage.
And it's from,
That's how it's branded.
I mean, everything. Just.
The tackiest representation is a T-shirt that you can sometimes find in the mall that reads, "It's fun to hang around Fort Smith."
Oh.
No.
I'm on.
Right, exactly right.
And I've gotten into arguments in the past month over people about how wrong that is, and people don't see it as that. They argue that, no, we should be proud of where we're from. To this day, that is still an argument I'm having with people. And I shouldn't even have to say how wrong and how much that needs to change, how outrageous that is.
It didn't occur to me just how relevant and how real all this still is until last year when I started connecting the dots. When I realized that at University of Mississippi there is a statue of James Meredith. And just 2 years ago, 3 frat boys were arrested for putting a noose around the neck of the statue and donning it with a Confederate battle flag. That imagery is just 2 steps away from what the Fort Smith National Historic Site presents, or at least presented. I did bring this up on Facebook. Some things did get changed immediately after that. I don't know if there was a causal relationship there, but I'm saying, if you find something in your town, in your life that you want to see different, start asking questions.
Okay.
Yes.
We have time for 2 more questions.
That also reminded me of like that video that we saw of those frat boys, and their song was "There'll Never Be a Nigger at SAE." That's what that reminded me of.
Yeah.
But honestly, I just want to like thank y'all for y'all's bravery for even like saying this, and like for being confident enough in like saying this, because most I hate to sound racist, but most white people I know don't even speak about it, and if they do, it's mostly in private. So for you guys to stand up in public and to speak about this, I commend y'all for your bravery. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. One more? Okay.
We can take more questions after the panel is over if you want.
Yeah.
What are the black people in your town? Are they active? Are they as outrageous as you guys? Like, are you aware? Like, have you had conversations with any black activists, whether young, especially like with everything that's going on in the media, like in Ferguson and with all the police shootings? So like, are there any black activists who's doing something similar to what you're doing?
Yeah.
Or
the director of sanitation is Baridi Nokakeli. He actually performs Bass Reeves. He dons the uniform and carries the gun and does all this, and is outspoken about representations of people of color in town, and is active in the black community, and a good representative to the larger community as well. And he's a tremendously tall, broad, beautiful man. He worked as a model in his youth, so forgive me if that was inappropriate, but it's true. So all this to say that he provides both an unimposing point of contact for white people who would otherwise be intimidated by talking to any man of color, other than in a really public kind of way. So there's that. There's Representative McGill, who I mentioned, who described Chris Cheney as, one of the 10% in Fort Smith. Like, these are the people who work together and meet at the MLK Oak Center, to rally and gather the community together and to speak out and to get people into the voting booth. So yes, there are people who are active, and there are people who are trying to make changes on the ground in that grassroots kind of way. But the community is small, so it's difficult.
I would say for my generation, it is a very thin line because it's well known, Arkansas is such a red state. And Fort Smith is such a conservative town that it is hard for, one, so many have been raised that way, whether they're black or white, that they don't see a whole lot wrong with it. Because it's always been that way.
The status quo is strong.
It is. And, I mean, to this day, hand on the Bible, did you know people still do group phone calls? Because my family does it to talk about the family liberal and what they're going to do about me. That is still Fort Smith. That is still very prominent, and if you are blue, we shun you. That's how it is.
This is how we find each other.
And so while there are, especially on college campuses, a lot of young people who are trying to make a difference, it is very hard to go against so many years of that's how it's done, so we're not going to change it.
Well, thank you so much. They will be available for further discussion and all. I really appreciate you on so many levels to come and help us peek behind the curtain of a lot of situations that we would not be privy to.
I'm glad it's mutual, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
At this point, we're going to do a transition for the next panel session.